Hello everybody and welcome back to the School of Hard Knocks. My name is Equinox, previously of the guild Everything Purple and briefly Salt Miners Union. And today, I'll be teaching you how to play Dagger Elementalist in GvGs. This is gonna be fun. Pardon my laughter at the beginning, but as many of you may know, DDLE has really fallen out of the meta. It really wasn't a class that was the most viable in the first place, but especially with a lot of the changes that have rolled around in GvGs within the past, I suppose, a year now almost. But this was the first video I received, so I'd like to thank this person. His in-game name, I believe, is Terra. So thank you very much for sending me this footage. I want to remind everyone before we get into the video real quick, please post constructively in the comment section below. Last video we didn't have any problems with that, which is fantastic, so thank you very, very much. First of all, the reasons why I'm making this video, very briefly. One, I'd feel rude not to feature it. And two, stability changes just rolled out, so it actually is basically pointless to talk about yesterday's meta because the new stability change is atrocious, and if the GvG scene manages to not be killed out by ANET's final attempt at a sword through its heart, we could see some very, very drastic changes in compositions upcoming. And for all we know, as 3 crafters have not really hit their work tables just yet. Well, I suppose by the time this video is out they have, but DDLE, or maybe even Dagger Focus LE, may be incorporated into compositions as time goes on. So, to help me with commentating on this footage and getting a better understanding of DDLE gameplay in general, I do not have Serane here to guest commentate, but I did actually get his help with understanding DDLE as he saw it from his time playing it, and she helped me quite a bit. I'll put his overall thoughts on the class and its role in GvGs in the comment section below, so I highly recommend you go read that. I found it useful and very interesting to read. And without any further ado, let's get into it. So I chose 4 rounds from the 11 that I saw to commentate on. As you can see, he plays a very melee-centric DDLE. He gets caught out early in the fight. His reaction time is extremely slow. He probably should have missed form when the second Zealot's Embrace hit him. Although even better would be that he should have lightning flashed towards his front line and used a shorter cooldown with the same effect. He's trying to fight with the melee here, but he's really unable to sustain in a pocket fight. Meanwhile, there's plenty of peripheral targets that he could be taking. So he engages on the Necromancer with a Ride Lightning Updraft combo, but given where the Necromancer was positioned, where he was retreating behind, towards the rest of his casters, as that Necromancer's melee was pushing into the QSS melee. That made it a very risky position for him to engage on the Necro with a RTL updraft, as it positioned himself in the middle of their team and isolated himself as a target. What would have been safer and probably more effective than what he did do, I think, would be a magnetic grasp onto the Necro, as that Necro was obviously being targeted. That would allow, even if the immob isn't very long, it would at least allow for your range to finish him off and generate a down state that your melee, that the QSS melee could punish. And immediately after he engages, I would have magnetic grasped and rotated around the right side of his melee to be in a safer area and not being targeted by those liches which are about to pop up. But as soon as he updrafts, he still has the opportunity to disengage, but once he activates that burning speed and locks himself into that area that he's standing in, he basically seals his fate, and he's going to get single targeted by those liches and go down. Another quick point I'd like to make here, since he's vapor forming in the down state, Notice how small his health pool is when he activates that vapor form. When he comes out of it, he's going to die, no matter what. He can't get rezzed, because the only way that he could possibly get rezzed with that low health, well, I'm not even sure if it would work with it when his health is that low, but maybe a little bit more, like 1 or 2% more health. The only way he could possibly get rezzed is with a frame perfect war banner, which obviously is not going to happen. If he was expecting to get rezzed, he really shouldn't vapor form with that low health, because it's not going to happen. He's going to die as soon as he comes out of vapor form, and even if he had enough health to survive 1 second longer, the amount of time it takes, there's a short windup to start rezzing a player. I'm sure many of you have noticed it. You know, while you're kneeling down, you aren't healing them, but as soon as you're finished that animation of kneeling down to help the player up, that's when you start healing. So there's really no way for him to be power rezzed, and there certainly wasn't any way of him being war bannered, at least by a human being. So keep that in mind if you're an Elementalist, whether it's Dagger or Staff, that if your health is that low when you vapor form, you will die when you get back up. So don't expect to get rezzed, and don't waste your team's time by asking for a res when you vapor form with that low health. If anything, you should vapor form towards the enemy and try to distract them a little bit. But other than that, there's really nothing you can do. You're just dead. So moving into the next round here, he's playing a lot more cautiously in this round, as you will notice. The first 2 rounds were a little rough for him, so he's holding back. He's taking good advantage of that stealth and not revealing himself. He really could have engaged there as the enemy melee was pulling off. He wouldn't have been dealing with AoEs or cleave damage. Obviously, he'd want to get out once those well bombs went down. But positioning himself on the left side to deal damage was smart. And he doesn't engage. He doesn't commit. Now, this Necro is almost dead, so he wastes his Burning Speed cooldown trying to get onto that Necromancer. Really unnecessary. They've got a target onto possibly the driver, and now he's waiting for the fire to come up. Then he engages. He waits really long, but then he gets a good amount of damage on the backline there. Very, very good amount of damage. And if he had peeled back off to his front line, then he would have been fine, but he overextends for far too long chasing the Elementalist. He literally just places himself inside of the enemy regroup while attacking that LE, and just asks to be punished. So when he does finally disengage, I mean, he's been targeted, so he's taking damage. He uses Mist Form to respond when, once again, really unnecessary. I mean, he wasn't in a lot of damage. He was just being auto-attacked by some necrotic grasps. So if he had just Lightning Flashed, he would have made out a lot better from that, and not wasted that Mist Form cooldown. As you can see in the upcoming clash, he's really going to need this. So, I mean, it happens right afterwards, and he doesn't have that Mist Form. So he positions himself well, he pushes through, and he turns around. Now, this is where it becomes an issue. So he's actually getting in a good amount of damage. He's staying within a range where he can deal out more damage than he's taking. But when he sees that the enemy melee momentum shift back towards him and his melee, he needs to move out of the way of that. The trick to melee damage positioning for anyone is to try and position yourself behind the enemy melee, or at whatever angle is safe, so that you're not taking cleave damage from like 8 people at the same time. So when they turn around on them, he ends up taking a lot of damage just from cleaves, really, and maybe some backline pressure because of where he's standing, which is basically pinched between the enemy melee and the enemy backline. So he does take a lot of damage. He definitely could have used Mist Form here, but he didn't have it. So he pops Armor of Earth, which is, I mean, if he was looking for protection, he already had it, and it was way too late anyway. He didn't need the stability, so that was just a panic press. And then he Lightning Flashes a very short distance. So he definitely just didn't use his cooldowns effectively. Obviously, the Armor of Earth was totally wasted because he just lost all of his boons on downstate regardless. After this, he does pretty well. Positions himself behind the Wall of Reflection here to make sure that he doesn't get targeted by any more of those life blasts. I also like to point out that his one good thing you can tell here, one good indication that he has solid mechanics, is the fact that he didn't suffer from a very common panic response problem that a lot of people tend to have, when being life blasted by necromancers. A lot of people will dodge roll right after being hit with the first life blast, and then by the time your dodge roll ends and your evade frames are gone, because of the 1 second cast time on the second life blast, it's going to hit you, so your dodge roll will be wasted and you will avoid absolutely 0 damage. And if he did that, if he made that mistake, he would have went down. But because he was smart and he waited before using the dodge roll, he managed to survive. So that was very good. And now coming up here after he regens a little bit, he's up to 5k health. Now here's a chance for him to go aggressive. Enemy melee is not pushing in on that. They're not trying to power res the down. They do not have cooldowns to blow. Their wells are on cooldown. He could be going very aggressive here, but he just stays back. And now he idles in the regroup. Could have used a Cone of Cold, and then used his Frost Armor for the 10% damage reduction before going aggressive. He gets a good blast on the fire field, which is fine. And he tries to get the Earthquake, which I'm not sure if he was trying to blast that same fire field, which he was no longer on top of, or if he was trying to actually knock down the enemy melee, but he wasn't really close enough to do that. So kind of a waste of that Earthquake cooldown there. Yeah, so he wastes that Mistform here and goes into Water Timing when he has high health, so those were both bad choices. He chases down this warrior after swapping to air, which may have been more effective if he followed his RTL with an updraft, but it's not exactly an ideal target to overextend on since warriors have a lot of health and armor compared to anything else, and as a result he's overextended. He doesn't get punished since the enemy is on the back foot here, and finally at the end there he gets a really good bomb. He accidentally hits 2 downs with his burning speed, which makes it useless, but he gets a 3rd hit on Guardian, which ends up going down. Probably should have swapped to Lightning instead for the sustained DPS from that instead of Water Attunement, but they already won anyway, so that was a nice end to that fight. Alright, so in the next round, his positioning and patience in this round are actually really good. At the beginning he's not committing with any large cooldowns, just hitting it with the Drake's Breaths from a good distance. Biding his time. There is an LE on the right side and a Mesmer appears. If I were him I would engage on that immediately. There's a call that the ganker on his backline, on one of the backlines back here that just went down. He should have turned and responded to that much faster than he actually did. He gets a pretty good response here, actually, when his melee has to turn and redirect their attention off of the enemy front line onto their down backliner, which I think actually turned into 2 down backliners. The enemy melee sees it as an opportunity to jump in on them and try to generate some downs from their front line. So his response by dodge rolling out and swapping to Water Attunement was actually really smart here, and because of that he gives his front line the necessary sustain they need to survive that. A big water goes down and his response is immediate. He starts throwing down some blasts, and now he starts setting up the churning bomb. This is a really, really good churning right here. So the enemy melee just disengaged, and they have liches popped. He flashes in, gets a lot of damage onto them, and helps generate that down right there that you see. He gets knocked back into the stack. He disengages well. Maybe not on purpose, but he does position himself behind that wall of reflection, which is good because he did see those 2 liches that the enemy team was sporting. So here he actually doesn't have stability going in because one of the guardians in his group doesn't pop it soon enough. I think he's still empowering back there, so he just doesn't even think about it. But he still manages to get up a lot of good damage onto there, and he sustains pretty well. Swapping to water, he obviously shouldn't use the frozen burst when he's not on top of a water field or trying to use it to chill anybody. So, and now you can see he's in fire. He's getting ready for the big burst. He's cautious about the line, and then he pushes in. Tries to Drake's Best from behind, but if I were him I would just go in for a bomb, and he does actually. He gets a pretty good amount of damage. He manages to get in, deal damage, and get out safely and make it back to a regroup. Obviously the Earthquake is not necessary for blasting regroups, really is not. It's a 45-second cooldown and shouldn't be wasted on a water blast when it has so much more better application, like roaming onto the peripherals. He starts churning the earth for the next engage. He gets a well-placed churning. Unfortunately, it gets interrupted by nothing. I think maybe he must have used a movement key or something, because no matter how many times I look back at the footage, there are no lines or statics that he might have gone through that would have interrupted it, and he had no stun effects on his bar until after the churning and the lightning flash. So I think he might have accidentally interrupted it on himself. But if that hadn't happened, that was an extremely good churning there. So after he recovers from the stun, he positions himself well. He stands to the enemy melee's right side. He's not getting hit by cleave. He's outputting a lot of damage and almost gets some downs there. Next, he has to regen because he's getting single targeted. So he does end up using the segment heal here. And generally, you don't want to do that. But there are times where it is necessary. And it is 100% a judgment call. And for me, I trust the judgment of the DDLE that's using the Signet heal. He did have Cleansing Wave and Cone of Cold available in Water Attunement. However, that may not have been enough to regen him. And he was taking single target damage. Things could have gone a lot farther south, and that Signet heal may have been exactly what he needed to survive that situation. In my honest opinion, if he felt like it was necessary, then I wholly support his choice in using it. I think it was actually a pretty good call on his part to actually pop it. I think a lot of DDLAs might not use it. Before anyone starts flaming him for using a Signet heal there, I honestly think it was a good judgment call on his part. In all honesty, it's better to use the heal and not die than to save the heal and die. He gets pulled. He should really be using the number 2 to weaken the enemy front line, but he doesn't. He goes in for burning speed. He's really low. He pops the Armor of Earth. I think if anything, he probably should have misformed and positioned himself south behind the walls of reflection. When he does miss, I guess he got confused and went towards the target instead of his own commander. Maybe he thought it was his commander. I don't know, but to avoid that death, other than Vapor forming in the right direction at the end, I think it was just him going too aggressive with that burning speed when he had so low of health, and not popping Misform. Like he should, like if he was gonna go aggressive with that low health, he should have just done the burst rotation, popped Misform, and got out, because he was a very easy target for somebody to hit with a Spinal Shivers or a Life Blast or any sort of damage. Overall, I'd say he definitely did better that round in a lot of ways. You can see his as the rounds go on, his mechanics and positioning definitely improve. And the next round is definitely one of his best, if not his best, from all the ones that I saw. Alright, so I definitely wanted to show this round because it shows a lot of his mistakes being fixed from this round. The stability rotation in his party gets a little messed up at the beginning, which gives him a few problems. But he does position himself well enough not to die in this bomb. He pushes through, gets a lot of damage in the back line. Dodge rolls out when he starts to see the momentum from the front line being carried towards himself. Uses the lightning flash over the mist form to get out safely. He doesn't have a lot of health. He's getting focused down by Life Blast, but he still manages to go aggressive and regen inside that big water field. Excellent reaction time to that big water field and blasting it. Obviously not patient with the frozen burst there, but that's okay. He gets a full regroup heal. Really needed to dodge roll out, but he has a really good, I want to point that out, he has a really good reaction to that immobilize with the burning speed evade followed by the misform to get out safely, so really good there. Goes into water to regen, goes towards the back line, but he didn't really apply much pressure. That would have been an ideal time for him to swap to periphery pressure. His front line was going for a regroup, his back line was getting ganked and pressured in general, and that would have been an ideal time for him to jump out, use some cooldowns on those backliners, and try and secure some down states for his team to capitalize on. He doesn't do that, which is unfortunate, but other than that, he's doing really well. He goes for a churning out of range, which is unfortunate, but it would have been a good churning other than that. He's maintaining pretty good distance here, as his front line is generating downs. He starts to lag a little bit, recovers from the lag, goes in to apply some pressure. He's still full health. He can go aggressive at any time. He's doing really well this round. He actually fails to notice a warrior on the right side that's really, really low that I think a lich was targeting, which he could have easily RTL engaged on and finished him off. And now it's time for a big bomb. He gets a good Drake's Breath, but he needs to go aggressive. I'm not sure why he's idling so much. They had some lows over there. Wastes the burning speed, gets a Drake's Breath. The fire grab was not bad, except he didn't take into account the fact that there is condition duration reduction onto frontliners, so that warrior didn't actually get the increased damage from the fire grab because the burning wore off really quickly. He probably should have gone for one of the other targets that was inside of the Drake's Breath longer, but that's okay. Overall, that was definitely a good round. He had good positioning. He had good aggressive play from these last two rounds. He missed that churning, but that's okay. As he becomes more aggressive and uses his burning speed and churning earth more liberally, his presence increases massively, and he's definitely a large contributor to the fights. I think he has a lot of potential because his positioning and mechanics are solid for sure. The one thing he really needs to improve on, since he is trying to play a Dagger Elementalist in GvGs, the reason why you play Dagger Elementalist is not to bomb with the front line, it's to take advantage of the versatility that the DDLE offers. So he needs to improve his awareness and react to peripheral pressure and apply peripheral pressure, but before he starts doing that, he needs to begin to recognize when is appropriate to do so. So in this last round, we saw a good instant where his front line was regrouping. There were enemy gank around him and on his back line, and he could have applied pressure there, but he didn't. And in other rounds, there were definitely some mesmers that were isolated off to the side of his stack, and they were far away from their own melee that he could have easily engaged upon. And he can definitely feel free to chase down some of the gank a little bit. Obviously not overextending and putting himself into a position where he's going to be ganked instead. But he could definitely be a lot more aggressive and apply a lot more peripheral pressure. He just needs to figure out when to do it. When he did do it the one time, chasing that staff elementalist into their regroup, that was an example of a bad time. It's good that he went for it when he did, but he didn't disengage soon enough. He stayed inside of the enemy regroup. So it was a good-hearted attempt for him to try and apply that pressure. His timing for it was inappropriate. But again, positioning and mechanics are pretty solid. A little weak in the earlier rounds. In the later rounds, saw massive improvements. So I think he has a lot of potential, and if DDLE sees some more playtime in future metas with the stab changes, he could definitely be a huge asset for his guild, no doubt. So that's it for this video. I hope it helps. I hope you all enjoyed. As always, relevant links are in the description below, including links to Serane's YouTube channel, so you can go check out his videos for some good DDLE play. A link to QSS's website if you're interested in their guild, and of course links to GW2worldvworld.net where you can learn more about GvGs and GvG guilds. And that will conclude this week's episode. Next week will be about Guardian gameplay, so look forward to that if you are a Guardian player, or if you aren't and just enjoy these videos. So I'll see you guys next week when that comes out. Ciao.